So there I was, minding my own business, wondering, I wonder how you make a Google extension, and I wonder if you could make a Google extension use Chat GPT to summarize a web page. Well, let's find out. Hi, I'm Kevin, and welcome to Do Learning, the channel where we do to learn and learn by doing. So in this video, build a Chrome extension called Page Summarizer, which will summarize a web page by grabbing its content, sending it to Chat GPT and saying, hey, could you summarize this? It'll then give us sort of 3 main points and a readability score. We'll also be able to ask some questions and say, what ways can we decentralize? And we can see we've got some answers here. Decentralizing can be achieved in a variety of ways, like blogging, engaging, and creating content with AI. Some ideas there. So there may be an extension that already exists that does this, and it may be better designed than this one. But this is one that we can create in 15 minutes. I'll share the code down below and you can adapt it to do whatever you'd like. Let's dive in. So we'll start off with an empty directory and we'll create a file called manifest.json. This is the file that decides what you're allowed to do. There are a couple of different manifest versions that have changed over time. Version 2 has been deprecated, so we're going to use version 3. We can name it our super summarizer and give it a description. Let's give it a version number and what action it's going to have. So we're going to provide a default pop-up, which is going to be the HTML page that's going to appear in the window that we'll have full control over, and an icon. And the icon needs to be made available in 3 different sizes, 16 by 16, 48 by 48, and 128 by 128. So let's provide that now. We also need to give it some permissions. We need to be able to see the active tab, and we're going to store the user's API key so that we don't just have to use my Chat GPT API key, you can use your own, and it would be great. To be able to store that key, we're going to need an options page, which we'll do as a settings.html. And then we'll need a content script, which is going to run in the background. And we want to say it's going to work on all URLs, so it matches all URLs. And the JS script we want to call is going to be called content.js. Alrighty, so from this we can see there are a couple of files we'll need: popup.html, settings.html, and content.js. So we can just quickly create those now. So popup.html, settings.html, and content.js. The settings.html is literally just a HTML page that's going to have a input to add an API key and a button to save it. And then we'll have a little script that's going to run to be able to do that. So let's write settings.js. So we want to be able to grab this button. When someone clicks on it, we want the input here to be retrieved and then stored to Google's Chrome. So we're using vanilla JavaScript, so we'll do document.getElementById, and it's the save button. We're adding an event listener of click, and our function then going to get the API key by grabbing it from the input field and get its value. And then it's going to use chrome.storage.sync.set. And we're going to set a key inside of the Chrome storage called API key, and we'll just do API key. We can't use local storage because that's bound to a particular URL. So we're syncing into Chrome storage. And for now, we'll just send up a little alert that says settings saved. So that's how we persist it. And if it already exists, we want it to be in that field when someone comes to this page. So we'll do chrome.storage.sync.get API key. And when we've got it, we'll get the data. And we'll say if data.API key, then document.getElementById API key.value is going to equal data.API key. So that's our settings page. It has no styling. It's going to be really ugly, but we'll see it in a sec. It'll be fine. So what's next? Well, the pop-up HTML is where most of the logic is going to go. And it's a pretty simple HTML page. It's got a document. I've added the style inline. You could add a separate CSS page, but there wasn't that much of it. And then the actual structure of the page, there's a button to be able to summarize, a little string that will hide and unhide when we need to, that's called loading, a div for the summary, a div for the reliability, some asking a question, button to ask, button to answer, and then the JS for this. Give that. So the pop-up JS is where most of the complexity is going to be. So there are a couple of things that we need to happen. We need the summarize button and we need to add the ask button. I'm going to make sure that this only runs when the DOM content has been loaded. I want to add an event listener to each button. So the first one had an ID of summary. So we want to add an event listener to that. So document, get element by ID, summarize, and add event listener. So what do we want to do here? Well, we want to be able to, first of all, we'll make the loading element visible. Element ID, loading, .style, .display, block. Then we want to get the current tab where active is true and the current window is true. And once we've got that, we'll have the tab and we want the 0th tab. It returns an array, so we want the first one. We need to send a message from our script to the tab to say, "Oi tab, can you get your content and send it back to me, please?" Now, we're able to send this communication because we have set the permission for active tab. So that's why we're able to do this. So we need to do chrome.tabs.send message, and we want to send the ID of the current tab, and we want to give it a named action. I'm going to call my action get page content. So that'll come back with a response, and part of that response will be the content. I'll then want to get the API key that we've got saved, and then I'll want to invoke a function to summarize the page. Summarize, I'll pass in the content and the API key. I'll create that function down here. It's going to be an asynchronous function, summarize page, expect the content and the API key. And before I write that, let's deal with this action. So when a Chrome extension sends an action to a tab, it goes to the content.js. And we need, inside this content.js, we need to be able to listen to that. So to do that, we do chrome.runtime.onMessage add listener. And this is going to listen to any message that's coming from the extension. So the callback function has a whole load of things. It has a request, it has the sender, and it has the method to be able to send a response. We need the first and the third. We don't need the second, but because it's positional, we'll need to put all three in. If request.action is, and we use the name we gave, get page content, then we want to get the content of the current page. Now our extension can't do this directly, so it's offloading that work onto this content script, which is in the page itself. So document.body.innerText. So we're just getting all the text inside the body, and then we're going to send that back to our content script. So this bit of code will be triggered when we send a message to that tab with that particular action. This callback function will be invoked. We'll get that response and get the content. Awesome. So what we need to do now is to write this summarize page function. Now we've got the content and the API key, it's going to do the work of actually getting our summary. So we're going to get a response from awaiting a fetch request, and we're going to directly query the api.openai.com/version1 completions. We pass in an options object. The method we're going to use is post. It's a post request. The headers we're going to give, well, it's going to be of content type application JSON. Authorization will be bearer, and we'll pass in that API key that we had above. And then in our body, we're going to json.stringify the options. And what are the options? Well, we're going to pass the model. I'm going to use DaVinci 003, text DaVinci 003. The Chat GPT documentation that I'll link to below will give you a list of all the models that you can use. This is a relatively cheap model. It's pretty fast, but the responses are pretty decent as well. I've got a prompt. Now, as with all things with AI, we want our prompt to give enough clarity to our AI so it knows what it's doing, and then we give it its data. So we say, you are going to create 3 bullet points describing the following content. It should be factual and concise. Also provide a reliability score. Please summarize the following. You don't have to say please, but it's good to be nice to our AIs. Now we can then specify how many tokens we want to use. Tokens are a way to tell our AI how much we want to spend. So well, I'm going to set this about 1,000, which is pretty long, and that is the response and the request. So if you have a big body of text, you may want to increase this. And maybe actually this is a setting we should put into our settings page so that our user can control this more easily. That's actually max tokens, right? And then I'm going to set the temperature. So the temperature is saying basically how creative we want our AI to be. 0 is not creative at all. Just give us the data. 1 is super creative. So I'm going to set this to 0.2 because I've asked it to be factual and concise. So I'll do it there. So that response will be set up, and now we want the data. The data is going to be found by awaiting the response.json. Once we have the data, we'll then be able to turn off the loading icon. So document.getElementById loading style display equals none. And then we'll set the inner text of our summary block. So document.getElementById summary inner text to the answer. And the answer is found in data.choices, which is an array. So you want the 0th there and the text property. Now that's the happy path. So let's just wrap this in a try catch so that if something goes wrong, we can handle that better. If something goes wrong, we probably still want the loading to disappear. And that's probably it. Maybe we'll console log the error, but actually that doesn't go to our browser's console log for the tab. It goes to the extensions console, so you'd need to be monitoring that to be able to see that error. So that's our summarize button. We're going to do something similar for our add button, but before we do that, let's add our icons. So the icons have to be a square. I'm going to set this at 16 by 16 to start off with. And then we could start to paint on here somehow. And then I will export it, and I'll export it at 3 sizes, 16 by 16, 48 by 48, and 128 by 128. I'll bring those images in here, and I'll make their names match what I called them in the manifest.json. So icon 16, icon 48, and icon 128. Sweet. So let's see if this bad boy works. So in the extensions, I'll go to Chrome extensions. I'll turn on the developer mode, and I'll add load unpacked. I'll then go find the extension and select it. Super Summarizer is here. It has some errors already. Amazing. It's content script, unrecognized key. It's content scripts. So if you have an error, they'll appear here. So I'll clear the errors. I'll go back to my manifest, and I'll update manifest.json to be content scripts. I'll save it. I'll update over here. Ooh, invalid value for content scripts matches. So let's go back and check that. So my super summarizer, if I click in details and I go to my extension options, I get that lovely API key page that I created earlier. So I'm going to paste in my API key. I'm going to delete it after I've created this video, so I don't mind putting it on the screen. I'll save. I get this lovely alert saying my settings have been saved, and if I refresh the page, they're being repopulated. So that's awesome. Now I go to node.js.dev. I'll go to the API docs, and I will click on my super summarizer and click on summarize. I'll send the data off to the API. I'll say, hey, could you do that prompt that we created, the 3 questions that it could do? And once it's finished, it'll populate this box. Depending on which model you use, it'll be quicker or slower, and the results will be better or worse. To be able to inspect, I right click and click on inspect and check the console. And I see there's a reference error on line 11, tab is not defined. So I've obviously done something wrong. Line 11, tabs, here. So I see a problem. This send message needs to be in the same scope as this tabs query. So I'm going to bring it in here. Same deal, update the extension, open the extension and run summarize. Aha, it was just that there wasn't much on there to summarize. So you get Node.js is the event-driven runtime, similar in design, influenced by other things. It's well suited for foundation of web library and this reliability score. I don't trust this reliability score, but it's there anyway. Okay, okay, so that should make it easier to be able to do the next one. So now I'm going to just copy this summarize and have the same thing for the ask button. So make loading appear, fine, query the active tab, get the page content, get the API key, and then we'll just call this ask question. And I need the content, the question, and the API key. Well, where's the question? The question is going to be the value of this input field, so ID question. So let's do that. So it's going to be document get by element ID question, and then we need to ask the question. So to do that, I'm just going to copy my summarize page function. I'm going to change this to ask question. I'm going to change content, question, and API key as the things that we're expecting. I'm going to change the field. We're changing summary to answer. And I'm going to change the prompt. So you're going to answer a user-generated question based on some set content. The answer should be concise and clear. And here's the question, and here's the content. Everything else works the same way. We're just changing the prompt, changing what's triggering the prompt, and changing where the answer is going. So we will go back to our extensions and update, go back to our page and refresh, open our extension, summarize, thinking about it, and now it's summarized, and we'll ask a question. We'll say, is Node built in TypeScript? Still thinking about it. Let's see if there's an error. Yay, ask question is not defined. Let's see why. I said ask page. Okay, save it, reload our extension, reload our page. Is Node written in TypeScript? Answer is an async, there's a JavaScript runtime. So, apparently not. So there you go, not maybe the prettiest of Chrome extensions, and maybe not the best prompts, but you could use this now to build your own Chrome extension, to add your prompts, to fill in your own pop-ups in whatever way you would like. Again, the code is available in the description below. If you want more videos about Chrome extensions or anything else, ask in the comments and we'll see what we can do. Thanks for stopping by, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.